I've yet to meet a healthcare worker who doesn't want the best for every patient. Further, I believe we do a great job training staff to be the best they can be. Now imagine training students to be the best they can be, then every day making an exam a little bit harder. With time, we'd expect to see an increasing failure rate like this. Except this is the adverse event rate for the NHS. Every day our workplaces increase in complexity with new drugs, new systems, new equipment, and a constantly renewing workforce. And every day we increasingly fail. System safety expert Dr. Terry Fairbanks clarifies human factors. We don't redesign humans, we redesign the system within which humans work. Unfortunately, in healthcare, we put almost all our focus on trying to redesign humans. People-focused interventions are less effective within complex environments. For patient safety to improve, we need to make the exam easier to pass, the systems we're working in easier, so adversity is less likely to happen. At least one patient dies every day from central line-related air emboli, many from disconnected lines accidentally left open to air. Every central line in Australia opens to air, yet we don't need them to. Central lines with bonded caps are used elsewhere without problem. There's no difference in cost, yet after 3 years we've been unable to trial them. Why? Following a series of deaths, New South Wales Health sent a request to industry for central lines with bonded caps. After finding a suitable line, we almost had a trial up and running at one hospital. However, the infection control department wouldn't support it, citing a guideline indicating caps needed to be replaced every 7 days. This guideline had been written by New South Wales Health, by the same individuals who'd put out the request for lines with bonded caps. Despite correspondence with all parties, this is where the issue still stands. This issue, and many like it, represent wicked problems. Wicked problems are difficult to solve for several reasons: their interconnected nature with other issues, incomplete knowledge, and the number of people and opinions involved. Solving wicked problems is extremely difficult in command structures. Instead, they require a highly collaborative approach. Further, solving wicked problems warrants a much deeper understanding of what's really getting in the way. What are the obstacles to patient safety? Well, what's our greatest fear in medicine? Hurting people, not being good enough. In making a minor change for the better, we might have to accept we've been hurting people, even killing people for years. Cognitive dissonance is described as the pain of accepting ego-dystonic facts. It inhibits an open, rational cycle of process improvement. It's more likely to affect those who feel defined by their decisions, often those furthest up a command structure. So change is resisted. Why haven't we already got this simple, life-saving message on our central lines? A comment from a senior intensivist may be that staff in their department are highly trained. They never get this wrong. They may view this message as being beneath them. A disturbing but very natural ego-protective attitude occurs where staff reject innovations that make their skills less relevant, not just for themselves, but for their learners and the system as a whole too. In part because the innovation makes their own deaf skill less important. If you've honed your skills with a direct laryngoscope, how do you feel about devices allowing video and direct laryngoscopy? Here's an image displaying the direct and video views. The two combined are at least as good, and most often better, than one alone. This is basic science. However, some may denigrate staff for even suggesting it, and perhaps say, "Show me the evidence." Evidence-based medicine wasn't designed to disprove basic science. Using it in this way to maintain the status quo is ultimately of detriment to our patients. However, even when something's obviously better, there's another word which can stop innovation dead in its tracks: cost. Innovations often cost more to introduce at the front end. Extensive cost-benefit analyses are almost impossible to perform, and so change and improvement is stifled. However, What happens when the front-end cost of a safer alternative is less than the intervention currently used? Surely we'll adopt it then. When valveless IV fluid bags, like the one on the left here, are disconnected, air can get into them. When reconnected, this air can enter a patient's bloodstream. 3-year-old Ruby Chen died due to an air embolus from a respiked fluid bag. The coroner's recommendation became known as Ruby's Rule, an alert that IV fluid bags should never be respiked. It's counterintuitive that an alert designed to improve safety may actually be detrimental. Unfortunately, alerts on their own absolve governing bodies from introducing more effective intervention. Further, there's a gap between the work imagined from policy writers and the work as performed by the front line. This gap is endemic to top-down safety approaches, particularly where those writing the policy have little understanding of frontline complexity. Respiking of IV fluid bags happens regularly throughout the world every day. Many staff have never heard of Ruby's Rule, and discarding a full bag of fluid appears wasteful. By focusing solely on error reduction, such as bag respiking, we miss opportunities to increase safeguards. The IV bags on the right here have a valve in them. If respiked, they don't entrain air. This represents a forcing function, a design constraint which prevents the adverse event from happening. What's more, these safer IV fluid bags are cheaper than those on the left. It's not cost, is it? Which gets in the way of safety. Another way healthcare tries to overcome air emboli is to label them never events, state they should never happen. Some hospitals in the US receive no indemnification against never events. They can be financially crippling. In turn, hospitals may be less likely to reveal them, so we're less likely to learn. If the conditions which led to their occurrence are left in place, then they'll always recur. However, adverse events by their nature are dispersed in time and place, so they're presented as a one-off. This dissipates the energy required to introduce the most effective solutions. Further, frontline staff who best understand their environments can't access error databases. Without seeing our errors, we can't improve. So if we struggle to introduce effective safety measures which are cheaper, what will we spend our money on? Robots. Amongst other things, millions of dollars on robots. After 15 years, more than 4,000 studies, the evidence indicates they're no better than traditional, minimally invasive surgery. It's amazing we spend so much money on robots with no patient benefit, yet we struggle to introduce interventions which are both safer and cheaper. Why? Is it because we're competing against one another? Mastering a new skill, like robotic surgery, gives us a competitive edge over our peers. The more complex a skill, the greater the competitive edge. Offer something simple in healthcare and it's often rebuffed, yet offer something complex and it may be welcomed with open arms. So our hospitals become increasingly complex every day. Drug and device manufacturers can exploit our competitive nature, driving in more equipment in the interest of financial gain. Those positioned to remove poorly designed equipment, the TGA, the FDA, are almost completely funded by the companies whose products they're supposed to govern. A conflict of interest at the expense of patient safety. This needs to change. Instead, companies need to work with us to provide the best environment, not the most complex or the newest or the most expensive, but the best environment for us to do our jobs optimally. Perhaps through creating drug ampules, which are easier to distinguish. It's too easy to review drug errors and say, why didn't they just read the label? In the words of Sidney Dekker, you think you can solve your human error problem through reprimanding and telling people to be more careful by issuing a new rule or procedure. These are all expressions of the bad apple theory, where you believe your system is basically safe if it were not for those few unreliable people in it. This old view of human error is increasingly outdated. It will lead you nowhere. Particularly given The human brain is great at seeing things which aren't there. There are tons of hazards which frontline staff are fairly powerless to remove. They come in many forms. Unnecessary distractions, like poorly designed electronic prescribing systems. While the future of prescribing lies in electronic formats, the majority of current systems haven't been adequately usability tested. The incidence of severe adverse events exceeds that with paper-based systems. Often, instead of improving or replacing electronic systems, the blame is left with the frontline staff using them. Perhaps the best way to ensure a mistake is made again is to focus solely on punishing someone for a mistake they never intended to make. In 2016, soccer player Steve Herzig had his urinary catheter attached to oxygen tubing. His bladder exploded and he died in excruciating pain. On hearing this, you may think, how could anyone make this mistake? It's easy to blame frontline staff. However, we don't know how it happened. Did Steve Herzig do it himself, attaching two ends of tubing which looked like they'd separated? Tubing misconnections happen regularly. The FDA has an extensive web page discussing them, patient after patient succumbing to something which could easily be designed out. There are international standards for tubing connectors. When someone accidentally tries to commit the error, the connection can't be made. However, we've yet to adopt these standards. Why? Perhaps because we haven't enforced it. Us, all of us, we all have a vested interest in this. We'll all be patients one day. We need to stop being bystanders. The bystander effect is one of the most replicable effects in social psychology. The greater the number of people present, the less likely people are to act. However, please realize that in doing nothing, we've still made a decision. Yet in Australia, when it comes to tubing connections, we've introduced something. We've made our nurses put stickers on the tubing, more work to do, adding more complexity in the belief it will fix the issue. It won't. It makes our jobs harder, making it easier to fail. And with other staff auditing how well the task is being performed, reprimanding those not doing well enough. It's seen as a key performance indicator. Here's another KPI, discharge time from emergency. I love this graph. It's not hard to work out what the KPI is. This is an emergency department under stress, desperately fudging figures or forcing patients out before they're ready just to reach an arbitrary target. KPIs impair staff morale, add unnecessary pressure, and are ultimately detrimental to patient care. They're a symptom of the command structure. Occasionally, however, persistence and collaboration does get through and leads to amazing safety solutions like the between the flags system of patient observation. Unfortunately, for most, suggesting change causes consternation. Keep pushing your idea and you may be exposed to the most primitive ways of stopping change. Bullying, threats and intimidation permeate throughout healthcare. It's useful to understand they won't be fixed by tougher laws. Don't let this stop you promoting your idea. Just do it wisely. True leadership requires a deeper understanding of oneself. Never go alone. Obtain the feedback, interest and support of others. How can we bring change drivers out from anonymity? How can we provide them with a voice without the bullying and intimidation? Perhaps through speaking without speaking. The Theatre Cap Challenge is obviously better for communication and teamwork, yet it's often resisted using every obstacle which can be thrown at it. However, our patients want us to do it, and in a staff survey, it appears we want to do it too. So why don't we? Groupthink, a cultural phenomenon where group self-reflection is discouraged to preserve group identity and unity. When we filtered our survey data, you'll notice something fascinating. This is a support from people new to healthcare, nursing and medical students, 100%. This, however, is the data for surgeons with over 20 years in healthcare, perhaps those with the greatest influence. This minority is able to perpetuate the groupthink. Are we going to upset this group, given it might impact on our future careers? Are we going to risk it to deliver a covert improvement in patient care? It takes courage to be honest with yourself and do things the right way. Be the best you can possibly be. Don't let the intimidatory tactics of others get in the way. Command structures of management work well in simple environments, passing down skills and knowledge, maintaining conformity and accountability. Yet to succeed in the complexity of healthcare safety, we'd benefit from a complementary management style, one which allows us to work together with radical transparency, where systems safety experts can work with frontline staff, patients, manufacturers, managers, and others. Network teams focused on all the wicked problems in healthcare, and which, where appropriate, makes the pain of staying the same greater than the pain of change and improvement. Patients increasingly suffer from medical error. We can fix this, so let's work together. Thank you.